Welcome to Yeshiva Daf. We're holding in Zevachim Daf Tzadikei. We're starting the Tzadal Amud base in the Mishnah. Continuing the idea of the beged that becomes, blood falls in it, so you have a din of tumah. Says the Mishnah, not tumah, a din of kibus. You have to go and you have to wash it, and we'll see, you have to wash it a certain way in order to clean it. And we'll see in today's Daf. Says the Mishnah, beged sheyotzo chutz lakloim. If the beged left the base of English, nichnas umechabtzo b'mokol kodesh, brings it back in as mechabtzo b'mokol kodesh, as we saw before. You have to mechabtz it in the heichal. So it went out, you bring it back in. Nitmo chutz lakloim, but if you got tomeh, you can't bring dover tomeh into the base of English. So what do? You tear it, so it loses the tumah. Then he goes and does kibus in Mokol Kodesh. Continues the Mishnah. Kli cheres, you have a kli cheres, which now it's the second thing. Remember, because we mentioned a little bit of it before. There's one thing when a clothing gets the dam, then you have to do kibus to go and wash it, clean it. Then the kli is holding the blood. So if it's kli cheres, it needs to be broken. If it's clean nechoishes, made out of copper, you wash it inside and outside. We'll see later in tomorrow's daf. Telling me you have to do hot water, the boiling hot water to clean it up, in order to take away the leftover, the residue, and that's only the clean nechoishes. That also has to be done in Mokol Kodesh. That's what we learned in the previous daf. Says the Mishnah, same thing. If it went out of Beis Hamikdash, Nichnas goes back in, Mokol Kodesh breaks Mokol Kodesh. Nitba chutz hakloim became tomeh.
Still brings something above a tomeh.
No, it's not tomeh.
Oh, it's
not tomeh. But if nitba came tomeh, now I can't bring it to base of English as it is. So what do? Noikvo, you make a hole in it. Then nichnas shavim Mokol Kodesh. Then he goes in and breaks it. Right? The breaking over here is to take away completely. There's a special Indian that if you swallowed blood of chatos, you have to break it. To take it away from being tomeh, you have to make a small hole into it. You do a punctuation. Clean nechoshes, that's the copper that we mentioned before. Shiyot chutz hakloim, left Beis Hamikdash. Nichnas, he goes back in. Umorkoi, ubishoytfoi, merika v'shtifa, as we'll see tomorrow's daf. We'll see more about it. It's merika. It's the hot water, cold water. You do merika shtifa, b'mokol kodesh. Nitma chutz hakloim, say bro, it's tomeh. You can't go in. What do? He breaks it. He breaks it somewhat. He takes away some of the shame of the kli, and he makes a big hole into it, and then he goes in and cleans it. Says the Gemara, how can you tear it? It needs to be a beged, meaning in order to go and have a din of kibus, it needs to be a beged. Here, if I tear, it's not a beged. Says the Gemara, the Mishar Bekedei Ma'afayos. So as Rashi explains, how many the Gemara is, he tears most of it, but he leaves the minority of the beged the size of Ma'afayos. Ma'afayos is something. It's like it's a I don't know the exact translation, but it's going to be some kind of a talis, a kerchief. He leaves something and it's still roy. Oh, so the Gemara right now understands as long as the roy of the beged is torn, even though you have leftover, first, it's not going to be tom anymore. That's the Gemara understands. So the Gemara, no, 1 second, the Gemara is bothered. What's truly bothered? If you leave that size, the kerchief size, that's what's really asked. So the one that's like, hey, midarabanan. The fact they still have tumah is only derabanan, because gzer derabanan. Maybe you won't do the majority. But midoraisa, once you tore the majority, it doesn't have tumah midoraisa. So that's legabi kibus. You have din kibus.
Shows you a lot of bring the tongue of ornament goes on.
But yeah, in our case, you have no other choice. You have deraisa, derabanan. So now here we have one gear. So Rashi is races the gear. So because Rashi learns with you don't have it. But let's see the Gemara the way we have it. If you make a hole into it, exactly. Sheniko b'shosh koton. So according to our use, so you make a small hole in it. Once it's well, it's not going to be completely broken. It's still usable, but it'll lose the tumor. Yeah.
Kibbutz is not considered a set.
Huh?
Kibbutz, the government, is that considered a say or not?
Yeah.
So why don't you say yes, if the license says, so why do you have to go through the whole thing? The yes from Kibbutz is like.
Here. Here. Okay, so I have to think about it. Not sure. Good question. I mean, if you go through the Tosis, not sure. Okay. So he says, right? Okay. So maybe because it's not beaten because when you go in, it's already tummy. Maybe. Says the Gemara, Kli nechoshes poichatoi. Fa'alav kli. Once you break his kli, tetzor mirtzev, meaning he seals it. He doesn't leave it so much. Rashi has a different gear, so Rashi says that it's only kli nechoshes. Now I ask you kli cheres to talk about different sizes of holes. But the idea is the same thing. What I'm trying to say, did you lose the shape kli or not? So where I lost somewhat the shape of kli, but not completely. If you have a coat that became tummy, now, but you have blood in it. So what do? And what are you going to say? Tear it, as we said in the beginning of the Mishnah. You can't tear the meal. Why not? So what you do is you take a little piece of the baguette, 3x3, you stick that in. So even though the baguette is intact, but only a small portion of it goes into Beis Hamikdash, and that's how he does kibbutz. So I asked, when you have a thick clothing or a soft clothing, the din is meaning it should not be 3x3 or shalish. Has to be shloish or shloish. Has to be a bigger size, not 3 fingers but 3 tvach. So here it's not a baguette 3x3. It's a very large baguette. It's a size. It's a big large thing. Elamah, only a small piece of it is going in. So because it's connected to a big baguette, so then even the smallest amount it has a chashivus. Says the Gemara, one second. This is a question, as Rashi says. This is not a question on the sugya here. Stam. The Gemara basically says, how do I do kibbutz? This is what we mentioned a little bit earlier. In yesterday's daf, we mentioned beginning of the daf. What's kibbutz? Kibbutz is not just washing it, but you have to do the process of kibbutz that's brought down other places in Shas, for example, by Nido. What is the kibbutz? Shiva ceremony. You have 7 different detergents to go ahead and wash out the baguette. You have to work hard. So, something I don't understand. You need to have 7. How do you do kibbutz and Beis Hamikdash? You have to do Shiva ceremony. Now, what's about Shiva ceremony? One of the Shiva ceremony is Meir Raglayim, urine. Ve'im machnisim Meir Raglayim Hamikdash. Let's see the Gemara. Fa'abai Shiva ceremony. Dam chatos umars the goyim, both dam chatos umars the goyim. Tzrichin Shiva ceremony. You have to have 7 ceremony. V'tanyo elosheim machnis Meir Raglayim Hamikdash. That's the idea of the Toyos. You don't put Meir Raglayim. So how do I do Shiva ceremony in the Beis Hamikdash? Toyos wants to say that's the question on the Kohen Gadol's baguette. Before, maybe you could have said you'll do a different cleaning process, but here they understood this. You can't answer that way. So what I've said again with base, maybe what he does is he takes the 7 simonim, mixes together, makes one big detergent. That's the Meir Raglayim is balua. It's not standing on its own. So what about Dani? If you say he didn't do it in the right order, or he did all 7 together, it's not called clean. He has to be one after another. So again, Meir Raglayim, how do you bring? Maybe he's going to saw on one of the simanim. Question even what is the having of the Gemara? But maybe the Gemara says maybe you have to do, you can't do all together. Maybe you could do one with another. So no, each one you have to do on its own. You take that one and you rub it 3 times. You didn't do it. Hello, the mivlo beroik tofel. What he does he mixes up with saliva. The 7 simonim, you have to mix with each one of them roik tofel, which is saliva, and that's what you do over here. The blood will be, the Meir Raglayim will be swallowed within roik. Okay, Zog the Mishnah. Now we're moving on from the kibbutz to the kli that has the blood. Echot shebishel boy You have a kli that you cooked with it, the chatos, or you poured boiling water into the kli. Then is doesn't matter which of kochim. You need this wash, which we get shtifa, which we'll see in the Gemara, which is boiling water and cold water. Shimon said, we quoted earlier, he holds kochukalim don't need to have this merika v'shtifa. Says the Gemara, how do you know if you poured hot water into it is good enough? I mean, it also requires this. So that Rashi puts out because it says boy. The word boy is next to shvir. They say anything which is in it, even if it wasn't cooked in it, just was poured in it. So here you have a very, very long taste, as you see. So Torah is brought down a few places in Shas. And Torah discussed the idea of irui. What's the din of irui? Is irui get kli rishon or not? Torah goes back and forth. Torah wants to say irui, even if you hold that pouring is not cooking, the whole thing, but it's cooking kedei klipo. What it hits, it does kedei klipo. That's why over here we treat cooking in the kli or pouring the hot water into the kli the same way, because at least cooks kedei klipo. It's of community gabi Shabbos, kli rishon, kli sheni. What happens? He took the piece of chatos and he put it into the ear of the oven, right? And he cooked there, but it wasn't touching the walls of the tanner. Abishul below the kabech mono. Do you need to have bishul cooking? And the balua has to swallow through, has to touch it. Meaning, is bishul alone enough to make the oven something that needs to have merika v'shtifa, or it needs to be touching it? Says the one more over Toshma, we learn the Mishnah. So you see that you don't have to have cooking in it, even pouring in it. So the one I know you don't have to have bishul. You can have only swallowing, which means pouring boiling water into the kli, but boiling mechatos, water that the chatos cooked in it, into it. The question is, what happens if you have cooking without bilu? In other words, if you have both, that's a classic case. You take a piece of meat, you cook it in the oven, and the oven absorbs the meat. That's for sure a problem. What about if it absorbs it without cooking in it? That's the case of the Mishnah of pouring. It absorbs it. It wasn't cooked there. Our question is, what happens if it was cooked and not absorbed? Almost maybe like reicha milso, like the smell of the cook is already a problem. Says the Gemara, says, well, what happened there? We didn't have it. Without what he was asking. So the they make sure that the oven of the Beis Hamikdash was made out of metal. Why? Why metal? Because if it will be kli cheres and you cook it in chatos, what's going to happen? You have to break it. Because we said the kli cheres, they have chatos in it, has to be broken. So your oven, you're going to have to break the oven every time you do chatos. So that's what they made out of the metal, because metal you do merika v'shtifa and you're good to go. If you hold that cooking without absorbing, it's okay. So just make it out of clay and make sure that you not touch the sides. Will be in the air, right? I have an easy solution. Why have to make the oven made out of metal? Says the Gemara, Kivan deiko shiro minoches deafiosom batanur v'ika bishul bilia v'yeshivateches. So you say you're right. The chatos have a solution. I just don't have to let it touch the tani. You put it in the air and you're good to go. But the shirayim minoches, that you have to cook it in the oven, and that does touch the oven. What is going to touch the oven? Rashi says, shemen ha-mincha, like the oil of the mincha touches the oven. And now you can't get out of it. Right? In other words, by chatos, I could just put it in a spit, put it in there. But mincha needs to be placed in the oven. So that I can't just let it be in the air. There's no such thing with the flour. So that's why I had to make the oven made out of metal, so I don't have to break it every time I did it. You have a solution. Says the Gemara, start the next sugya, but really this goes into the next daf, but we'll start it here, because that's just to get to the end of the few more lines. Hautanura was a oven. What they did is they spread in the oven
Grease.
fat, meaty fat, right? So Rashi says over here, they took the alio, which is the tail fat, and they put it on the oven. The bread, they put it into the oven. Coating. It says you cannot eat this bread that was cooked over here, that was baked over here. Even with salt. Why? Because this bread is fleshik. There's no way to see it's fleshik. Maybe someone's going to come and eat it with milk. So that's a din. That's a din in Yuchas Basa V'Chalav. So we're very careful. The bread, which it goes both ways. A regular bread, which is fleshik or milchik, is also because you make up to eat it all the way. Unless you have a special siman that you see that it's milchik or fleshik, there's some way that you should do it. Siman. But here we didn't do it. We said regular bread. So you're not letting it. And what are you going to do? So he said le'olam, which means this oven can never bake any breads because once it's swallowed, absorbed that fat, so it became a fleshik oven, you can't do any bread. Says the Gemara, Meisivei, ain't lo shim seis b'chalav. You're not allowed to put into the dough milk. You're not allowed to, if you did do it, you're not allowed to eat that bread. Because someone's going to come to eat the bread with meat. It's going to make a sandwich out of it. Also, similarly, you don't coat the oven with the fat of the tail. If you did do it, so then the first bread that you bake in the oven becomes awesome. Until he reheats the tanur, right? So what do you see over here? The heating the oven fixes the oven. And the previous one said, no, you can never use this oven ever again. Question is, once something was baked in the oven, are you able to be machshir the oven? So we know halacha ma'aseh that we are machshir the oven. But they were understood that according to Rabbi Law, you can't be machshir the oven because once it absorbs, it doesn't go out. So he says, right? Because as Lo Shirash is, it never cleans up. It's always going to have some absorption of that. Says the Gemara, but here you see that once you heat it up, it's okay. Says the Gemara, here's a clear raya that the what? Here's the raya that the oven, if you heat it up, you're able to be machshir the oven. Right? Really, that's all halachas that we do when we have machshir in basar l'cholav or echshar for Pesach. Can you be machshir oven? So that's we could machshir oven. Why? Because once you heat it up a lot, you have kibul oi, kach pol toy. The way you absorb it takes it out, you're good to go. So that's what the raya is here. You see that if you did something wrong with the oven, just reheat it and you fix it. Rabbi Eli said, no, you can't fix it. So more to you, clearly you could fix it. And now the Gemara is going to continue into the sugya going into tomorrow's daf. So we'll stop over here and Be'ezer Hashem continue from here tomorrow. Kol Tuv.